All right, we're going to go a bit over Unit 1. So there's a part of Unit 1 where you are supposed to, we're going to call it manipulate equations. Manipulate equations. So this is Unit 1. So sometimes you're given things like this. And then they'll tell you to solve for one of the letters. Now, we let our brains get super confused on this, and we forget everything that we've learned with solving equations. What you're really doing here is you're just solving an equation. It's the same principles you've been doing. You want to get this h by itself, and you want to get that h by itself by getting rid of everything else. So it's kind of like how I said earlier, we want the variables on one side and the constants on the other. In this situation, you're going to have all of the other variables, and then this side you'll have h. So it's the same basic principle, it's just you're not going to end up with one clean number. The first thing I want to do is break down what's actually happening in this. It's length times width times height. Now that I see that it's really just multiplication, well, I know how to undo multiplication, right? We undo multiplication by dividing. So if I divide both sides by length and width, then the h should be by itself. That works out because anything divided by itself is 1. So we end up with 1 times, I'm going to make my 1's look a little bit different and my l's look a little different because that can get kind of confusing that all the l's look like 1's. So if I have a 1 times h, I just end up with h. So it's by itself. Now over here, I'm just going to keep it. V over length times width. And that's how we manipulate an equation. This is actually a really handy skill, and you're going to be building on this a lot. So we really need to learn how to manipulate equations. Unit 4 has us manipulate equations a lot when we want to use the substitution method. So to use the substitution method, you have to get one of the variables by itself. So let's say we want y by itself. You have to figure out what's going on around y. First, I'm going to draw my line to help me remember when I move across that line, I need to do the opposite to maintain my equality. I want to get this y by itself, so I have to think, what's in the way of getting the y by itself? Well, we don't know what the x is. We're not trying to solve for the x. We just want this whole term to be on this side, because all I want on this side is y. Everything else needs to go away. So to make this 0, I subtract it, right? Because anything subtracted by itself is 0. So I'm going to subtract it from both sides to make it go away and be 0. Because again, your goal isn't to solve for x. I'm going to put a line here so it's not confusing. Your goal is not to solve for x. Your goal is to solve for y. So we just want to move everything else to the right side. Now you have to think, what's going on here? It's multiplication, right? A number next to a variable means multiply. In order to undo multiplication and to turn it into 1y, we divide it by itself, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now to maintain that equality, you got to do it to both sides. So again, we draw that line to remember to do things to both sides, and that way when we move across it, we do the opposite, right? This is multiplying. I move across it by dividing. Now, you can split this up if you want to 11 thirds minus 5 thirds x, or you can leave it as this. It doesn't matter. But that's our answer. We're done. So again, all you have to do is manipulate it. Let's try one more. I'm going to write it down, and then I recommend that you pause it and try to do it yourself. Let's do this, solve for x. And then let's try, solve for h. Okay, so there's your second one, there's your first one. I recommend you pause it and then try it. Alright, hopefully you paused it. So again, one of the things we do here is we're learning strategies. So we want the x by itself, so I'm just going to highlight that to remind me that that's the only one that gets to stay on that side. So everything else is going to move over. To make 5y be 0, I'm going to take that away because 5y minus 5y is 0, and we want it gone. We don't want it on that side anymore. So again, 5y minus 5y is 0. That's why it's not over here anymore, because I took it away from both sides. I want 1x. I don't want 0 x's. I want 1x. So I have to figure out, how do I turn that 4 into 1x? Well, anything divided by itself is 1. So if I divide it, I get 4 divided by 4 is 1, and my x gets to stay, right? So that means if I divide both sides by 4, there's my 1x. Now we can simplify that if you want. So 14, notice how I'm using my calculator and not keeping it in my head. 14 divided by 4 is 3.5, so you can leave it as a decimal if you want. And then I'm going to do negative 5 divided by 4 is negative 1.25. So notice that I kept that negative in there. That negative matters. The sign next to the number is the sign of the number. I'll say that again. The sign next to the number is the sign of the number. Yeah, it's a minus sign, but minus signs are negative signs. Minus means negative. And the addition sign means positive. The sign next to the number is the sign of the number. All right, great job, we did it. Okay, let's try our next guy here. By the way, you should go back through and carefully make sure you did every step. I'm running a little out of time today, so I'm going to move on to my next one. Okay, I want to solve for h. So again, I'm going to take a second. I'm going to remember that my rock star h is the only one that's going to be left over here, and everything else is going to be over here. So I have to think, what operation am I doing here? So if I were to break this down, it's 1/2 times b times h. This is me processing the problem. Again, this is a strategy. You don't have to solve it exactly like me. But I think taking that extra step for me to process what's happening and to rewrite it with that multiplication symbol helps me do it correctly. Because once I identify that it's a multiplication symbol, I know that all I need to do to get rid of this guy and this guy is to divide it, right? Because the opposite of multiplication is division. So if I divide 1/2 and b, it would look like this. Now that's a little messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you keep that if you want to. And then over here, I'm going to show you a different way. So another way you can do it is go ahead and divide by that b. So you end up with 1/2 h equals a over b. And then instead of dividing by 1/2, you can take the reciprocal. So I don't know if you remember that, but whenever you divide by a fraction, you're actually doing that thing called keep, change, flip. Do you remember that? So you change the division sign into multiplication, and then you flip the fraction. So you actually multiply by 2. So instead of writing this little kind of gross looking thing, we can do 2 times a over b. Both those answers are right. This one's just a bit more simplified. And the reason that we can do this is because of the keep, change, flip thing. So you've learned a lot of things in your upwards of 6 years of education. So maybe you don't remember this since it's been so long, but if you do, it can really help you out with dividing fractions. I hope this helps you understand manipulating equations. And remember, you can use any formula or any combination of letters to practice this. Feel free to make up your own, and then use things like Photomath to help to see if you got the answer. Google it. You can find other examples there too. Just if you Google it, I recommend putting with the answer key. So like equations practice with an answer key. That way you don't have to do extra work. Have a great day, and I hope you get your algebras together to do some more math.